Hi, welcome to the webinar Living with Wisdom and Compassion. My friends Carine Bouery and Jerker are here joining us. We're going to start with meditation guided by Jerker. So let's get started.
And allow your body to settle where you're sitting. So you're stable, you can be upright and connected with the ground, the surface you're sitting on. But also feel like your torso is open, maybe your head is stretching upward, so there's a lot of space for the breath to come and go into your body. And allow yourselves just to take a couple of deeper breaths, breathing in oxygen and new life, and breathing out, relaxing, letting go. And so in this short guided meditation, we'll base our awareness, our consciousness, our mindfulness in our natural breathing, just the way the breath comes and goes in our body. We might touch the breath at our nostrils or the movement in our chest or our abdomen, and just allowing our kind awareness to rest with the breath and the waves of the in breath and the out breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. In, out. Aware of the full length of my in breath, the starting, the peak, and the ending of the in breath, the transition to the out breath, the flow of the out breath, and the transition into an out breath. The in and out breath rocks gently our body like waves coming into the shore. Breathing in, I come in contact with my body sitting in this present moment. Breathing out, I feel warmth, kindness, caring for my body. Aware of body, caring for body. Like I can put a hand on my abdomen and a hand on my heart. Just also through the contact of our palm on our body, feel the body. Feel the breathing, maybe the heartbeat. Continuing this recognition that there is a body here, expressing our gratitude, our care for this body. Being here with our body for the strength, the intelligence that the body has, but also for any weakness, any sickness or pain our body is storing, holding in this moment. Opening our awareness to our whole body, caring for our whole body in all its aspects. And if our mind is distracted by thoughts or ideas, there's this rhythm of the in-breath and out-breath in the body can be our bridge to unite body and mind. Allowing ourselves to arrive, to be at home in the here and in the now. So slowly we can start to open our eyes, come to the end of this guided meditation, but we can also use this awareness of the breath in our body to ground ourselves here and now as we go through this session together, so that we can be in touch with our whole selves and not only ideas or words, to ground ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Jerker. Thank you. It's very important to start your day or an event with a small meditation, always remembering your breath, always grounding yourself, because that determines the tone of how the day or the event will turn out to be. So this was a simple exercise by Jerker of just being in touch with your body, listening to your breath, getting grounded, feeling your sense of touch around your abdomen area and your heart, which are also another two intelligent systems in our bodies that need also care and attention. And just by giving yourselves 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, even 5, 10, 15 minutes, however you want, to just look at yourself, observe yourself, feel the sensations in your body, feel the breath go in and out. Just by this simple attention, your entire day can be impacted for the good. So thank you so much, Jerker, for setting the tone of our event. Thank you so much. Before also we begin, just a little bit about myself and why I'm here as well. So I've been a marketeer and communications specialist for the last 18 years, but a happiness coach and consultant, a certified one, for the last 5 years. So I had my own consultancy, and I got into the science of happiness really only because I saw a lot of misery in the workplace. I saw a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. I saw a lot of disrespect. I saw a lot of lack of trust. And I really, it really broke my heart, because we spend more than half of our time in the office today, or in general. So, and sometimes we work with people we don't know that much, and sometimes we don't even like that much. So, on top of which, you've got the workload, managing your own personal life as well in the background. So, when I saw this happening in the workplace, I just thought somebody's got to do something about this. And here in the Middle East, it's things are still very hierarchical and bureaucratic, and we're not yet there, not as open about these kind of topics, especially in the workplace, as we are in the West, for example. So and at some point I also death. I saw somebody have a heart attack and he actually passed away there and then in the office. And I just said, this is too much. This is too much and unacceptable. So I got into it. I started studying it, employee engagement, the science of happiness, and what, how can we use science and spiritual help us lead healthier lives, less stressful lives, with people we don't know, even people we'd like to get to know. How do we start perceiving others in a better light? So, on this note, I'd like to ask Rodolfo, since you've been a business consultant for the longest time, what have you seen personally, the in the business world, the dysfunctions that have affected people and have impacted businesses as well, and do you believe they are the reasons why and just business collapses and so forth?
Yeah. um, yeah, one of there's several things that are important, and one of the reasons I do the work I do today is because when I started studying business, I was told that business was about competition, right? And throughout the years, I got into family business consulting, and I recognized that competition was actually destroying the family dynamics, right? So it was about making families or allowing families to learn about cooperation instead of competition, right? And how to work together instead of how to beat each other, um, and how to have more compassion towards each other. So as I started working with family businesses, it started dawning on me that it was really important to move business away from competing into cooperating, right? And that's one of the things that um, runs the business world right now. It's that competition, right? That I have to achieve, and what I have to achieve has to be better than another person. So I'm always comparing myself to others in what in what my path is, what I should be doing, where I should be at my age. Um, and so this game of competition is an ego-driven game, and which leads us to compare ourselves to end up either self-inflicting pain uh, or hurting others around us. So for me, cooperation and compassion are key to transforming our lives and business.
Totally makes sense. And from a scientific perspective, cooperation actually makes us happier. So there are many studies that have been done. It was a particular game called The Prisoner's Dilemma. They had groups of people play it. And this particular game, I'll type it out now a little bit later. So the whole idea was to see whether people will be happier competing together or cooperating together. And then the results came out to be, of course, that people were much happier when they cooperated. The win-win solutions that came out for both parties created a more peaceful scenario between people. So Jerker, when do you recall your life back when you were a lawyer, and what were the things you've seen that were challenging and that were a little bit maybe dysfunctional from your side of the world of law?
I think we have a lot of views in society that is impregnated in corporate and in all kinds of different professional worlds of what happiness is, what success is, what our lives supposed to be about. We have a certain story that's been told from generations of achieving a higher standard of living, a better material situation, because people, our ancestors, have been impoverished, haven't had enough food, shelter, clothing, medical attention. So it has been this fear in many ways driving us to to be free of the the scariness of living in the natural world. And our technology has enabled us to drive in this direction in an unprecedented way. And we haven't had the time collectively to really look at what are these views, what are these stories driving us of who we are, what's important in life. So I think that was when I was working and I saw some people around who were both very invested in their career, and they also wanted to have a rich social life, and they wanted to have a family, and they had some family business, and the enjoyment and the actually the living. That's what I saw around me. People that bought into the idea or what we're supposed to be doing, living in a city environment, being professionals. It just didn't make people happy. We're just always like this wheel going and going and going. And if you have that view and you're in that system, it will, you know, we can start looking at a lot of small symptoms of that. But for me, for there to be wisdom and compassion, we have to come back and examine the system itself and the motivation. What is our intention to go to work? Is it then to kind of partake in this, elbowing and just be a little bit nicer? Or do we want to offer opportunities for a different way of living? I think that's what we do in the Plum Village tradition, and not just our monasteries, but the local sanghas and so on. We continue to practice in community because we also realize what you share, Carine, about this of being together and cooperating. And when we come together, there's much more wisdom and compassion available to us. So for me, that is like what when I think of my life in the in Stockholm at that time, I see friends still. Is this busyness? We're not satisfied. We don't get enough. So that is like we cannot really enjoy. Rodolfo put out something as Friday celebrations. Can we enjoy the successes in our life and see the thing that really speaks to our heart and speaks to our well-being? So for me, that is a you could touch that in the workplace, and it's like with the personal connection and really seeing people. I think that's what I was available to help out in different things, and when someone was getting stressful and so on, I could be calm and kind of be there without wanting to fix, but just help settle. And I see that could help a lot already. But um, yeah, there's um, one time we had an event with a number of company owners and CEOs in San Francisco, and our teacher Thich Nhat Hanh spoke to them. He said, "You know, you have to choose. You want to be happy or you want to be number one." So our idea of success is to be number one, whatever we think our area of wanting to be successful is. But can we be happy? We're always striving. We're always trying to get ahead. And so we're never here. So we can never access our compassion, our wisdom, because it's in the here and now. So that's my.
Also another study shows that by a Harvard professor, his name is Robert Sampson, and he called it the collective neighborhood effect. You were talking about the sense of community and sense of belonging, and he neighborhoods that had a high collective efficacy, meaning they had high cohesion, high cooperation, and the cooperatively for the common good. The results that they've seen out of it is that there was a rise and an improvement in child health, in high school graduation rates, in life expectancy, imagine, and there were less crimes. So this sense of cooperation is definitely something that businesses today have to realize. They need to highlight this kind of thing, and rather than use competition. And I believe, you mentioned also this busyness. So, Rodolfo, this is a question for you. Sometimes we get into a conversation with our friends and they ask you, so how are you? Oh, I've been busy. Or where have you been? We haven't heard from you. Oh, I've been busy, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that term? What are we saying here? What does busy mean here? And what are its negative connotations when we say we're busy? Rodolfo, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm going to say something, but I'm actually going to throw this back to Jerker, because up until a few weeks ago when we started having this conversation, I wasn't aware that I was one of those people that was constantly saying I'm busy. Right? It was just like I'm doing a lot. Right now, I have a lot of projects. One of my projects is this, like bringing this kind of information out. But then I have other things that are coming out. I'm writing a book, so I'm in the final stages of that. I'm preparing workshops. I'm actually attending my clients and working with them. So, and I kept saying, yeah, I'm busy, and it hadn't dawned on me what the word meant until we had the conversation between Jerker and I. And for the past few weeks, I've been transforming the word and I've been very active, right? Producing, right? Active. Because I realized being busy just kept me, or the word busy, this was something that I recognized about, it was when I was starting working when I started working as a consultant. I had this idea that I had to work 10 to 12 hours a day to feel productive. Right. So even if it was like 7 hours, I'm done. It's like I had to find something else to do. Right. There was this idea of I have to keep doing, like doing. And that's what, at some point I recognized, like, why am I doing this to myself? Right. And that was the understanding that I had a few weeks ago of the word busy. Right. It's like just keeping myself doing stuff versus I'm actually like acting upon things that I want to. Right? Because keeping myself busy is just keeping my mind engaged in something. And so, when I was starting, I recognized this, and I started giving myself breaks, just recognizing how much work, how much time do I need to work? Not even time. It's like, what do I need to do and get done? Not even needs. Like, what do I want to get done today? And sometimes it's done in 6 hours. Sometimes it requires 10 hours, and that's fine. Learning to give myself breaks afterwards, right? Because that was another thing that I found myself doing. It's like I was working Monday through Saturday, sometimes even Sundays, and I never took breaks, right? Because I had this idea of how much work I needed to be doing, and not stopping, not taking breaks, not taking time for myself. So after a few years of that, and feeling really tired, I started recognizing I was doing that to myself, and I started taking Mondays off if I had worked during the weekend, or taking a Wednesday afternoon off and just saying, hey, I'm not working Wednesday afternoon. Right? Why? Because I've been working a lot and I need a break. Right? So that was moving from busy to active, and still keeping myself doing, but doing with an intention, right? And knowing when to stop.
Doing it consciously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which it's, sometimes I went through this myself. I'm a victim of this too. And I learned to take a break. I learned to pause and really assess what I'm doing And then I ask myself, is this really necessary? Is this to do good for me and for others? So there are some unconscious questions that I start asking myself before now I take action on doing anything. So this really helps me, again, like you said, be intentional. And sometimes, Rodolfo, guilt gets in the way. I feel guilty if I'm not doing anything. I feel guilty. How do you deal with the guilt?
There's a very good comment from Denise in the chat. Says, I think too sometimes that people say they're busy, it's because they feel that keeping or being busy is what's expected from us. And exactly, it's like it's society pushes us to, hey, if I'm not doing something, it's like if someone sees me Monday afternoon just lying in the pool doing nothing, just spending the day, they're like, oh, he's lazy, right? It's like, why? It's like, I worked Saturday, I worked Sunday. It's like, why am I lazy, right? Like, why can't I take a break, right? So there's this expectation that we should be doing all the time. Yerka, I know you want to say something, so I'm going to pass the word out.
At the monastery, Mondays is actually our official lazy day. We don't have a collective schedule, so we just have meals, and then you can putz around as much as you want, take as many naps as you want. But I was noticing that when I was working, and especially the last year, I was working and I met clients sometimes at our office, and sometimes I also went out. So I was in the car, and sometimes I had a meeting after lunch. So I had like a couple of times remembering eating a sandwich in my car on the way to this client meeting, and it was it was like driven by this idea of being busy. It's like, this is going to be a great satisfaction, that, and you send off a text message while you're at it too, and then you show up, and then you like feel like you're in this momentum. So I think that is what is I think is a challenge. We're so used to being very on the
Okay.
go, always going. It's kind of in a busy way, so we don't know how to stop and relax, and we get restless, we get anxious, and also shame and guilt comes up. It's like, wow, really, I have to this, I have to that. But with practice and the practice of meditation, of stopping, it also helps us to re-examine what are my values right now, what is driving me, what is my views about what is happiness, what is to live a life. This human life is very short, it's very precious. So what are our you know our focuses? For me, that is wisdom, that we keep in focus what is the most important thing for us in our lives. And when we are in a state of being busy, we lose track of that. We just keep going, whatever it is. Sometimes you'd hear people saying, I'm procrastinating with this and that, but we keep going. It's like these are great tools for many things, and they can keep us going like crazy. It takes so much time, and our mind starts speeding up. Our body's just in one place, but our mind, our senses, get so much input. So it's addicting, but also help us to be in this loop of keep going, keep going. Many people, when we come to retreats, are so tired. They cannot get up for sitting meditation because they've been pushing themselves so hard. So that's where the compassion comes in, and seeing, like, if we really honestly look back, how am I doing? Am I pushing myself with, dragging myself out of bed and needing coffee to get going? And then how do I kind of, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, like in that cycle, and it's very difficult to stop. So, with my own personal experience of being busy, also as a monk, there was a time, I think it was during a US tour, it started. I was helping organize a tour, and I was also a Dharma teacher in the Abbot at Deer Park. And so, a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things going on, caring for a lot of people, a lot of activities. And so many of my friends knew that. So sometimes they weren't sure if they could approach me to ask something, even if I feel like I've been really trying to be approachable and really love to get in contact with people. And at times they would say, I know you're so busy, I don't want to bother you with this. And then I realized, is it their perception, or am I actually true? So I said, I do things, and I want to use my life energy for something I care about. And so that's when years ago I said, oh, I wouldn't say I'm busy. I'm active and I'm engaged, but I'm not, I'm engaged in things, right? But wanting my deeper aspiration of doing beautiful things for my own contentment and for the benefit of others. And so I had with a good friend the last couple of years, we were both quite active, and I was saying sometimes, well, if I do it with the intention of that it may benefit all living beings, it changes. Even doing some admin work or some finance work, I know that it helps facilitate all the things we do at the monastery. And he did a lot of IT work. So you can see, actually has something to do with the benefit that is offered. And I can see that also that intention of wanting to do beautiful things and good things can also, because a habit of doing a lot of things and feeling like if we're productive, then we can feel good about ourselves and so on, is sneaky, you know. So I saw that I tried that in a couple of times, both when I was in Plum Village and a winter retreat some years ago. And I said, okay, for these 3 months, I won't do anything extra. Let's just do the minimal of what I need to do. And that worked just fine. I think I was the only one that didn't notice the other things I didn't do. So maybe at the
So
work different, but it's also like our views again, our perceptions is kind of shaping our world. It's not necessarily the truth. So for me, it's good to find ways to play around with that. Take a period. It's like, okay, this period of time, I'm gonna have 2 evenings a week just on my own. I'm not gonna like be on the internet. I'm just gonna be home, no special activities. Maybe half a day where I can just meditate and take it easy and come back to myself. So the rest of the week, we have the capacity when we're engaged and active to actually be there. And it's not an idea that we're there. It's not an idea that we want to be kind and so on, but we actually, people feel it around us. And it's very difficult if we're in this loop of busyness, we cannot access that. The stress is driving us. We haven't
that's
arrived.
very true. That's a very true. Also, there was an I read about the tendency of people to be kind. They had in the social experiment they put a beggar in a college campus, and they had students walk through. Now there was a group of students that were early to come in to reach their conference room, and then there was another group that were late, so they were intentionally made to stay behind a little bit so that they are late for their class. So they saw the behavior of these two groups. The group that actually went to their class and conference early and they passed by the beggar, they actually showed kindness and helped the beggar, either by talking to the beggar or giving them some money, giving them some food, in comparison to the group that was late. So they saw a big 60% gap between the two groups. So when you're late and busy, so the whole point of this experiment, it shows that when you're late and you're busy and you're always in a hurry, it doesn't leave room for kindness to happen, kindness to flourish, compassion to flourish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening to our world today? And we're seeing this crazy wheel we're on, and look where we are. We are now in VUCA times, and people are just not handling it very well, and they're not treating each other very well, you know. So on that topic, Rodolfo, how would you define compassion? And how do you think we can use compassion in our modern world today?
Yeah. So, Jerker, you correct me if I missed this, but the definition of compassion that I use is very close to what in Buddhism is used, which is a deep desire to help sentient beings get freed from suffering, and it has to include us, right? Um, yeah. So how to include compassion? It's got to start with us. It's got to start with recognizing what's going on within us and learning to take breaks and care for ourselves, right? and when I say care for ourselves, one of the things that I realized at that moment, and when I was getting really busy with my work, was that I was just exhausting myself week in and week out. So I had to learn how to stop and take breaks and take like I was saying, a Wednesday off, an afternoon off, and just enjoy and take care of my body and stop thinking. Because at some point I even realized that a friend called up and he would ask us, "What are you doing?" And I was lying in my bed, exhausted, resting, and my immediate answer was nothing, right? And then they were like, "Okay, so let's go here or let's go there." And all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, I don't want to go," but I just said I was doing nothing, right? So there was even the sense of guilt and hard. It was hard for me to say. It's like, "Well, no, I don't want to go." Like, right? So I learned and I taught myself to say I'm resting instead of saying I'm doing nothing, right? So it became an action, right? Taking care of myself became a decision and an action, and it takes a space in my agenda, right? It's like, okay, so this is self-care time, right? So it's like yesterday afternoon I had meetings all day long, and then at the end of the day it's like, I want to exercise, I need to move. I'm sitting in front of a computer like 8 9 hours a day, and so it's like I gotta move. So I'm closing up. So it was like 5:30. I'm closing up. I'm going out, taking a run, doing some exercise, like moving, activating myself, right? And it takes, like, I actually separate that time, and sometimes I do it at 10 in the morning. Sometimes I do it at 2 in the afternoon. Sometimes at 7 o'clock in the night. But I I separate that time. That's part of taking care of myself. So as we start taking care of ourselves, I think it becomes really easier to think about others, right? And to accept that, right? So I know I need my sleep. So when someone around me tells me, it's like, well, I'm really tired. It's like, okay, so go take a nap, go rest, right? Because I understand how I feel when I'm tired, right? And the, and that we need, right, rest. If we don't rest, then we get sick. That's there's a direct relationship between taking care of ourselves, eating right, sleeping, exercising, right, and our physical health. Mhm.
And also the way we deal with people, right? We will start snapping out at people. We won't manage our emotions very well. And this is a problem also, that people have a very difficult time expressing what they need or expressing what they feel. So, um, and why is that, you think, Jarek?
I think this is one of the things we're not trained as, you know. And it's interesting to explore for ourselves in our childhood, for example, which emotions, which feelings were like accepted and there were space for in our family of origin. How was anger and sadness dealt with, for example, fear. And most of us haven't had like a great role modeling in how to take care of feelings, to recognize they come and go and there are response to certain things, but that we kind of had to tighten up and toughen up on some areas, and some were like accepted and promoted. So it started kind of, you know, unbalancing us, because everything that comes out is not, welcomed in a way. We don't learn how to deal with them, and that has been going on for generations. This. So it's not something new, because I think that's what's so empowering these times, that there's more and more people recognizing the sufferings, the difficulties, the depressions, the loneliness, the suicide. So also when we talk about compassion, is to have the intention and the capacity to relieve suffering. And so I see, the more I can do that inside, and that's also one of the aspects of the guided meditation we did, to get in contact with all the different aspects of my body, and can accept and care for all of them. The things I like about my body and the things I rather like would be different. And so that is like training ourselves to have love, to have compassion for, a wider range. Is kind of easy in the good situations to have compassion for people around us, but that we care about. But if we want to have wisdom and compassion, like really, we also how to learn to grow it. And so we talk about compassion as one aspect of true love. And I've noticed that too when I came back to Sweden and the pandemic was just starting up, and it still felt kind of vague to me. You hear a lot already in the news and so on, but then I talked to a good friend from university, and both she and her husband had got really sick for a couple of weeks, and they were still dealing with it. And so, like hearing her first person account of being sick and how it felt and so on, so and compassion can be touched in me. There's a different thing than numbers on the television or in the internet. So because we're social beings, when we actually come in contact with the suffering, with the difficulties, not abstractions like television news, it's very difficult to really connect with the strength of compassion in that. But it's like, wow, I understand. And then I saw a short documentary from a hospital in New York City, and I have friends in New York City, and they were looking at also the people working at the morgue, how many people then elderly, especially in the early stages, that got infected in New York. And I was just feeling so much gratitude for all these doctor and nurses they interviewed, and it was a little bit more like in depth, and you really met them as people, even if it was on a newscast. So like when you go a little bit deeper, make it a little bit more personal, then we can touch it. But if just becomes number, then actually stresses us out and we start closing down, so we don't have access to the compassion that is potentially in us.
So how do you train people to be more compassionate? Can you give us like an exercise or strategy on that? Because
Mm.
sometimes it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, especially now with layers and layers of complexities and suffering and all of that. And
Mhm.
these walls that you talk about, these closed perceptions of the world. How do you feel we can increase that, or we can tap into our compassionate selves and
Yeah.
start giving compassion?
Yeah, it also so much depends on where the person is at. A first necessary step is to be able to stop, which means to calm our mind, to settle in a little bit. So there's a little bit space around the activity. It's not just the thoughts or the emotions or the activity in our lives, but there's a space, there's awareness, there's kind of a both energy and space around it, so we can observe things without being caught up in them and pulled away by them. And if we have that, it's great. And then we can start like recognizing things that happen in ourselves, like Rodolfo was saying. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a bit anxious right now. Can I like feel into the anxiousness, breathe with it, and we have the half smile is also the half smile of the Buddha. It's a smile of peace, but also of acceptance. So we can have that as a practice internally and externally. Okay, can I smile to this too? Also this is coming to be, without having to go into fixing it or judging it.
Exactly, because a
Agreeing
lot
or
of
not
people.
agreeing, that is that place of recognizing what's going on and learning to accept it is important for us to be able to have compassion and actually then to be a resource for lessening the suffering.
A lot of people run away from, let's say, negative emotions, right? From suffering. People are scared to suffer.
Yeah.
People are scared to feel anxious, or when they feel anxious, they panic. Is it wrong to feel negative emotions?
It's a natural part of life, so we have them. The question is how we experience them and how we relate to them. I think one of the greatest gifts being a practitioner and living a monastic life is this space around what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking is grown quite large. So this, I'm not always like pulled into habits or reactions. I can respond, and many times I choose not to respond at all because it's just like woo woo. Things are not worth investing energy in. So it's also knowing that what is worth investing energy in, and some things you just let them pass. Everything needs nourishment to live. So it also means that if we repress feelings and emotions, they're not going away. They're just disappearing a little bit and they're coming back, you know, stronger later on. So that sense of acceptance, of calming, of relaxing the emotions that are unpleasant, it helps, you know, our consciousness to start like, ooh, settling down. But it's difficult to go into the suffering and the most difficult things if we don't have any of that calm and the settling in us already. So we also have a practice we call selective watering. So if we are full of stress, we are full of anxiety and irritation, for example, we might need to put ourselves in a place where we can actually like be in nature, for example. It's kind of calming our whole nervous system. Come back to our breath and like do something physically in our body so we can, we're refocusing our attention to something that would actually nourish the antidote. So we're not fighting the anxiety or the restlessness, irritation in us, but we're finding a way out by changing our focus. And many times we need help with that because most of us have not trained. So
So I also want to add to that something that for me it dawned on me that the more active my mind is, the it sort of makes me numb, right? And I've seen that with the people I work with. It's like excess mental activity numbs us from what we're feeling. So we tend to run over our own emotions and suppress them when we're thinking too much. So we keep our minds busy, busy, busy. We don't pay attention. When we don't pay attention, we don't recognize that we're feeling, it numbs us physically and emotionally, right? We're feeling frustrated. So, but we're doing, and up until it comes to a certain point where we can't ignore it anymore. So then it bursts out like anger, right? Or like a burst of anger or anxiety or whatever it is. As we slow down our mind, we learn to be with what comes up and listen to what comes up, then we start noticing things as they're coming up. So it becomes easier to engage with them and to deal with them because we're dealing with them as they're starting to come up. It's for me, it was one of the things that I recognized was um, I used to keep myself so busy that I used to skip a lot of meals, right? So I would get up, it's like I would run, get myself ready, and run out the door and not have breakfast. And then I was running from one meeting to the other, and then by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was starving, right? But I didn't notice that I was starving. I was just upset at everything and everyone, right? So now all of a sudden I started noticing that, oh, what I've got is I'm hungry and my body's in so much pain that I'm upset, right? But I'm just taking it out on everyone around me. So it's like, okay, so I gotta eat, right? But then I started eating like whatever it was to just stop the hunger, right? So I had a Coke and some chips or something like that, right? It was just that idea of killing hunger instead of nurturing my body. So by the end of the day, it's like I was tired. I was not well nurtured. My body wasn't nurtured with good food, so I was excessively tired. And as I started recognizing those things, like I started taking breaks for making sure that I have breakfast, making sure that I have lunch, making sure that I have good food in my body, right? And so when I start recognizing that I'm hungry, when I start recognizing that my body's asking for fresh food instead of like heavy foods, and so start giving myself that, and the quicker I give it, I give my attention to it and I attend to that suffering, right, then the easier it is to overcome it, right? And the more in tune I am with myself, then it becomes easier to become in tune with others around me, right? So I started noticing how people around me is like, oh, they're upset. Now, so it's like, okay, so it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, have you had lunch? It's like, because I know what happens to me when it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I haven't had lunch, so I become more sensitive to others as I became or I became more sensitive to others as I became more sensitive to myself, right?
One exercise we can or I have put out there in my workshops when we tackle empathy and compassion is a science exercise by Dr. Sonia Lombrowski. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's a psychologist at UC Riverdale, and she came up with this exercise, which was, of course, backed up by lab studies. It's called the random acts of kindness. So what you do is you dedicate one day of the week to do 5 random acts of kindness to 5 different people you don't even know, or you know, and watch what happens. So the whole idea is when you become intentional about that, like making sure that you can dedicate one day of the week to perform 5 random acts of kindness to 5 random people, it has shown to be very rewarding to yourself and to others as well. So ask yourselves today, what kind of acts of kindness do you do on a daily basis? And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be a donation. It could be as simple as a smile, as simple as opening the door for someone, as simple as helping a colleague or a friend in need. So I think opening our hearts to allow compassion into our lives is about also really seeing how we act with others, right? And what we can give, not necessarily from our tangible resources, but from our heart, from our kindness, from our energy, from our empathy. So
Yeah.
random acts of kindness, that was
that's really important, but I would actually change that from random acts of kindness to intentionally living. Right? And I know you're thinking the same thing as me, Erika.
Very true.
Right? Which is coming from just whatever comes up, like randomly comes up, to actually choosing what we want to do, right? So that's one of the things I call it living from purpose, right? And my life changed when I made the decision that every act that I take, every action and inaction in my life has to contribute to global well-being, right? I made a decision 14 years ago, right? So everything I do has to contribute to well-being for myself and those around me. And my life changed. Everything, like everything about my life changed. I stopped getting upset when it was Monday morning, right? It's like, I want to go to work. I want to do this. I want to engage in projects. There's always this infinite amount of energy that comes up about things that I want to do, right? And I've taken it to a place where even when I'm studying or paying at the counter in the grocery store, it's just making sure that I connect to that person. Right, that's helping me pay for my stuff. Just saying hi, how are you doing? And then they usually have this automatic response like, "Good, how are you?" Right, and it's like, "No, how are you doing?" Right, and then all of a sudden it's like shaking the world. And it's like, "Well, I'm a little bit tired." Right, it's like, "Oh, so when are you getting out?" "Oh, I still have another hour to go." It's like, "Well, I hope it goes up by fast." I said, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, it sure will." And that moment, right, I just recognize the humanity in that person in front of me, and I hope to at least give them some recognition and make them feel a little bit better, right? So just that's living intentionally for me, or living out of purpose, right? And my personal purpose just uh, uh, helping raise awareness or consciousness, so we can live in in a world of greater well-being, right? So living intentionally is really important. So taking random acts of kindness into intentional living is for me the key to happiness, and true happiness and well-being.
And linking that back to the business world where we have to cooperate with others, how do you see that intentional living perspective working in the workplace or
Yeah,
in business?
yeah. I want to touch on that, but I want to hear Yerika's point on intentional living, because I know he's got amazing stuff to share, and I will come back to that. But I know Yerika is biting his tongue to say something.
Yeah, we talk a lot in the initial stages for what we want to include in the conversation. This intention, what's our intention? We talk also about our aspiration or volition. What is this energy? Is a source of nutriment too that feeds us actually. So it's not just what action we do, but actually the intention of doing it. And so that could kind of obviously enlarge for the benefit of ourselves and others, and then also for us to be able to be compassionate, we have to be wise too, to understand when is the right time. Many people that are kind, they want to help, they want to save everyone. you know but sometimes it's also because we're afraid of suffering, and we don't trust that people can help themselves if we just support them a little bit. Even not being so quick to fix or to wanting to change things, but like just showing up. Do we know how to collaborate with our colleagues, for example, in our family? Do we understand the other person's needs, where they're at, what is important to them? So that's can be part of our intention to actually, like, I want you to be happy. And the golden rule doesn't always work because you need other things and I need to be happy. So if I treat you the way I want to be treated, it doesn't always work. So that's where wisdom comes in into love and compassion. They go together. They're like interwoven and they support each other. And I think also with this of collaboration is I'm really inspired by some modern thinkers too in how to see the business world and economy and also the future of humanity. If we don't change, humanity will go off the cliff. The planet will continue, so we have corona, we have climate change, and we have a lot of discrimination and economic disparities. And so David Corton is a wonderful economist and thinker. He wrote a book that I read that really inspired me in this of changing the story also for like people in the world and in the workplace, of from empires to earth communities. And it ties in also to a little bit, Corinne, what you were sharing earlier with communities that function well and have a higher level of well-being, that is not the capital, or that the basis for our current economic system is not working either for sustainability on our planet or for sustainable, healthy, happy human lives. So that is what we have to get at. So wisdom is to see what is causing suffering, and it's not just you know to lessen a little bit. It's good that we stay more stable every day, but for me, it's like I don't want to contribute to practice of mindfulness, for example, that just helps people endure unhealthy system better. We have to have the insight to change it from the inside or offer alternatives. And so that is one. And another wonderful writer is Charles Eisenstein. And one of his books is it's a long, tongue-twisting title. The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. I can write these two down too because they're really like from a secular and a just very you know common sense kind of perspective, offering a different story of what our life can be like for society. I think that those kind of thoughts and ideas is a lot of compassion and wisdom in there, but they're also easily accessible by a lot of people. So I think that is and also when I have intention and I live in accordance to what I care about, what I think is most important, I can be happy. It's easier. I don't have to achieve something or get anywhere. I think that's also one where intention actually gives us a meaning and a sense of satisfaction in our lives, not just to have done it and keep going, but just like, we have a purpose, we have a meaning with our lives. So the more wisdom and compassion we have, it can go deeper and deeper and really like bring out the best in us. And when we come back to the most beautiful aspects in us, we help to bring them about in other people very naturally.
I want to piggyback on that to answer the question you asked me, Corinne, because going back to organizations and businesses, just for me, the wisdom is to understand that we're all in this together. So competition is like, yes, I'm a business major. I have an MBA degree. I've been in business consulting my whole life. But right now, it's like I completely understand that competition is the worst thing we can do to ourselves, right? And that's the wisdom that we need to start spreading. It's like we need cooperation, not competition. Like, and we need to focus business not on creating profit, but on creating well-being, right? And that makes sense for business. It's like let's think as a collective about how can we make a better world for everyone instead of making profit. Making profit doesn't make sense if we destroy the world, right? What makes sense is to create a better world for all, right? And for me, that's the wisdom of interdependence, the wisdom of compassion, right? The wisdom of love, right? So it's like bringing that to systems, right? Now the key to this, and that's the work that I do, is to understand that it has to start with me, right? It starts with the individual understanding in him or herself that developing love, compassion, and the wisdom of interdependence in myself actually starts influencing the system. Because I'm not going to change the system if I still have people within the organization competing with each other. Like we got to learn how to collaborate, right? But we learn how to collaborate when I open up to collaboration, right? And that's the key, right? So wisdom starts like we need to bring at least those three wisdoms of interdependence, compassion, and love, right, within ourselves. And now we start spreading that. Now that's what once we start living that, we can start creating different systems, and we can transform business and all organizations.
I'd like to hear maybe from some people here on the call. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on this? Do you have any ideas on how we can improve, or how can we use compassion? And what, or it could be maybe what have your experiences been yourself? You know, do you see light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see that leaders today are becoming more compassionate? Are we going in that direction? If anyone has any ideas there.
You can just unmute yourselves if you want to contribute something or want to say something, or you can write it in the chat, whatever
Or
makes you
write it
feel
in the chat. I think, Carrie, you're saying something. Unmute yourself. No? So, so Jerker, what is there anything? What would you? What do you think our audience will need to take away from this conversation? In your opinion, what do they need to understand, and how can they make a difference?
Well, I know 6 or 7 participants that already have a path in a community and are doing amazing things in their local communities to, to better the world, to make it more beautiful. So that I have a lot of confidence and gratitude for. And others, I don't know, it's difficult to know where you're at and what you need. I think is if we see light in the end of the tunnel or not, for me, is not about the end of the tunnel. It's about here and now. Because our tradition and our teacher has helped us to see that there's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. There's no way to peace. Peace is the way. So in our actions of thinking, of speaking, and acting in the world today, how can I train myself to have more happiness and more peace? And that's how the future comes to be. But also there's these structural processes that are, been in place that is driving us in a direction that is kind of dark. But also there's a lot of waking up happening. And so it's not just about if we get there or if everything turn out, happily ever after. That's not a realistic, worldview in my book. So it's like, how can we learn to accept and recognize suffering, and to learn how to transform it and how to also cultivate happiness and well-being, and also then to open our eyes to each other. And I saw recently a Swedish comedian and poet. He had a beautiful performance. He called it, "Can't we just be nice to each other? We're gonna die after all." I think that is like a good slogan. So if we remember that, we're not so afraid of death. We're not so afraid of, also our teachers, years and years ago, he taught us we have to look at the ending of our civilization. It will come sooner or later, it's inevitable. But how do we relate to that? Is it full of fear and despair? Or do we see like, oh, actually, like, it's beautiful to live as a human being on this planet. I'd like to contribute to do it fully today, and maybe then we have a chance to live many more generations as well. So it's come from that place of awesomeness of life is awesome. It is a wonder to be alive in this moment. We have to remember how to touch that, and because we have it in us, is our innate nature. And if we can live from that place a little bit more often, a little bit more deeply, then also others will feel it, and you know a brighter future will be possible. But we also need like ways of training, whatever tradition or thing, meditation or what we're into. We also need continued practice to go deeper, so it doesn't become a memory. It's not just that we're tidying up our house, like we're not bursting out in anger anymore, or we're not like panic attacking, but we can go so much deeper than that. And if we do, we have to like train ourselves. And in
So
that
you're
too, last word, we also have a focus and the importance of finding an ethical way of living. We have 5 mindfulness trainings, and our teacher contribute also to a new ethic in the end of the millennia with UNESCO, with other great people. And so principles of living with integrity, of living in a direction of interconnectedness, of kindness, that is also something that there's so many different ways of living an ethical life that can help us to contribute to the things that we want to see more of. I think.
And where are your trainings inspired from, Jerker? Like the kind of mindfulness trainings, your meditative practices. Tell us a little bit more about the background and what you offer in general to help improve consciousness
Yes, I'm
and
a student.
mindfulness and interconnectedness as well.
Yeah, I'm a student of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, who's had millions. Hey, some friends showing up on screen. Who has sold millions of books throughout the world. So that is what I've been training his teaching, and is based in the teaching and the practice of the Buddha. But also our teacher spent his whole life renewing Buddhism so that it will actually fit our needs in the modern world. So that is where it's also then up to us to continue to do that. So it's skillful and appropriate to the conditions and the sufferings of today. And so we then have monasteries, and we have local communities of practice that organize, weekly meditations together and events and so on. So the Plum Village tradition is like present in all over, and that's why it continues. I'll continue mostly in Swedish right now because I'm still on a healing sabbatical mostly. I'm teaching some in Swedish, and later we'll see, but it's all based in Thai's teaching and the Plum Village tradition.
Do you do some of these things online as well, Jerker?
In Swedish, I've done some. It's maybe next year I'll grow, but it's I'm taking it slow right now because it's making sure that my health is recuperated and creating good healthy conditions, not for sickness to reappear. Is my first and second focus right now. So have fun is the third one. So if if teaching comes into that category, it's also something that inspire and nourish me a lot. So we'll see what comes.
Would you like to share a little bit about your healing journey with us, Jerker, and how all of this is impacting it in a good way?
Yeah, I have a new good friend here in Sweden. He's an artist and is also teaching some spirituality and giving talks. And he has, in Swedish, he has like a word that is, before you can be humble, you're humiliated a little bit. It's like before humility,
Mm,
there's humiliation. So I've seen that the most difficult parts in my life, including stage 4 cancer, which is like, would then say that taking care of yourself, it you know helps you not to get sick. And then as a Buddhist monk and teacher, you get stage 4 cancer. There's some people kind of scratching their heads, how did that happen? But I've learned so many things from that, and it offered me some more humility, because until I got diagnosed, I felt like I was the healthiest and the most energetic member of the sangha in our community. So as uh, you know, and it has shown me things, both of what my deep aspiration is in this life, and also some of the suffering that hasn't had enough time or conditions to be really like embraced and transformed. I think those are also aspects I see, like it's been the gift of being sick, and also not taking for granted that my energy and capacity will continue to keep growing, like it's been the last 15 years previous to getting sick. I realized actually that's not sustainable. Like, and I acted and lived in a way that I thought I could, be there for more and more people and more activities, and so it didn't work. So in that sense too, is also wisdom and compassion in like the most difficult situation. I also had to ask for help so much more. I depended on people, both my mother and brothers around me, for like just getting food and you know getting clean clothes and getting to the doctors and so on. So I was like this, you know, clear experience of interbeing, of interdependence, that I need people's help, otherwise I won't survive. It was very clear, it was very strong. So I think that is a big takeaway. And yeah, I could keep going. I am thinking, I almost put it out there to have 3 half-an-hour webinars just talking about sickness and health and what I've been through. So that will come up sometime, but not yet.
Jerker, you're a warrior, that's for sure. My father also suffered from cancer and eventually passed away from it. And there's so many people I know in that same predicament. And I just want to say, well done on your part. And what really stood out for me is when you said humility, that when you face suffering, something about suffering makes us more humble, and then suddenly makes us open up to the way of looking at the world. And I can say this happened for me as well, not through health issues, but through relationship issues. I had, and it started with the very poor relationship between my parents. So they were not really a good example for us. And some of the things that they displayed and demonstrated, I took it to my relationships, which were also a disaster. So I didn't learn, or I only learned how to be more respectful, more respectable, more honest, and to live with integrity by suffering. So I saw my suffering as truly something that really blossomed me into something, into the person I really want to be, a person who lives with integrity, who lives with morality, who has ethics. And I sense and really I use this thing called radical honesty. Sometimes, however much I want to not share some information, knowing that the person will be hurt, I do so. Just to practice on being honest all the time So you either say what you need to say or just don't say it at all. But when you say it honestly and truthfully. And what I found is that people respect you more by being this way. Yes, it will get them a little bit angry at the beginning, but then, your argument would be, I'd rather be honest and truthful with you because I respect you. The reason why I'm being honest with you is because I respect you. And in some cultures, and especially I can say from the Arab culture, we've been brought up to thinking that by being honest or by saying our opinion, it's not a good thing. It's disrespectful, actually. So they have it reversed completely. So we don't know how to say no. We're always saying yes, 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 but internally we don't want it, and for us that has caused a lot of conflict in our relationships. I mean, this is one of the things there. Rodolfo, your program, you call yourself a conscious leadership shaman. To the people here, explain to them what a shaman is in general, and how does your program bring the wisdom of shamanism into the business world?
Yeah, well, I use the word shaman because a shaman, what a shaman does is it bridges, or he or she bridges, the spiritual and the physical world, right? And that's basically what I'm working on doing, like bridging the spiritual and in the leadership world. And when I say leadership, it's not especially related to business, though I do think that businesses need to take a lead on transforming the way we live, more in a personal leadership space, right? So it's bridging those two areas between living intentionally or living from purpose, assuming personal responsibility for my life and the impact that I have in my life, in the space around me, which is interdependence, treating myself and everyone with compassion, and having a beginner's mind in that process, right? So those are the 5 principles that I use in bringing those, because there's spiritual principles, right? There's purpose, interdependence, unconditional responsibility for my thoughts, what happens within me, compassion, and beginner's mind. Bringing that into daily life, right? And especially leadership, personal leadership, but business leadership, because I really do think that the transformation of the world should be led by businesses, right? And individuals in business, but businesses, right? So yeah, so I use the word shaman as a mind breaker. It's like I really want to trigger people, and when I say trigger, it's like, yeah, this is not going to be your regular work, right? This is not going to be a regular workshop like that. I'm going to challenge you, right, on an inner level, so you can transform from inside, so that we can transform the system, right? So it is a trigger, right? And it is a word I love, right? Because I've studied with different traditions. I've studied Buddhism, but I've also studied with Native American teachers and shamans from all over, all the way from Hopi land to Peru and Bolivia and South America. So it's an integration of all of those teachings. That's like Jerker. Yeah, I have a long process of spiritual learnings, but in different areas. So mine's like, I couldn't say I have a single path. Buddhism is what I hold closest to my heart, because I find Buddhism more as a science of the mind and the being than anything than a religion or a spiritual practice. It's more science. It's about experiencing and recognizing the results, and then experiencing again, and that's science. But then I have studies from all over. So I like the word shaman because it's sort of what I resonate with. Right?
And tell us about your program, Rodolfo, that you're offering online now around that topic.
Okay, so actually we have 2 things we want to invite you to. One is Jerker's, as you were talking about your teachings, Jerker. You wanted to share one of your teachings, which is actually in Swedish, right? So I'm going to share it here. So tell us a little bit about this, and tell us when you're going to do it in English for the rest of us.
Okay, so I've been doing calligraphy and art as an expression of both reflecting and insight for many years. I call it the joyful art of the heart. So when I came back to Sweden, I felt I wanted to have a forum to be able to start writing and contributing, and also to share the plum village practice in Sweden in more ways. So that is um, the joyful heart, Hjärtats glädje. I have a website, and we're gonna lead a couple of retreats this November with local communities, and it might be a English twin later on. We'll see, but things like this, and if I do anything else in English, it would be you can see it through Facebook or Twitter. There, you see my accounts. I have many friends. I'm very open with my friendship. When we train as a monk or nun, we see ourselves as a brother or sister, meaning like we see people as our siblings, our humanity as our family. So yeah, that's just one way to find out when things are happening. Maybe next year, but maybe later. So it's also a process where when conditions are sufficient, things arise. So I'm also hoping that we can get a meditation with Rodolfo before people start, signing off. We're had a wonderful time together, but yeah, thank you.
Rodolfo, your mic is muted. Just tell us about, yeah.
Yeah, before we close, I want to share an invitation with you. And yeah, we'll do that brief meditation for closing up. So this is what I'm offering. It's a Living from Purpose workshop. It's a 2.5 hour workshop that we'll do through Zoom. I've been doing it in Spanish, so this is the first time I'm doing it in English, but it's a really fun workshop because it's about going within, understanding, and through a series of questions, the story is really funny, and I'll tell it in the workshop in full. But when I was 18 years old, I had a very good friend in the university, and we would invite people to go out with us, sometimes girls, sometimes just guy friends, and we'd just question them. But it was more of an interrogation. And it was really fun for us. Some people got really intimidated and would never talk to us again. But it was really interesting, and it's like 20 some years later, these questions that we used, I recognize the power of them, and we'll use them in this workshop, right? So it's a process of recognizing our purpose and putting it into words, right? So it's a really fun workshop because it's really interactive. It's about me asking questions, you doing self-reflection, and then we coming together and sharing and building up our own purpose through those questions. So you're gonna get an email after this with the information and a special discount if you because you've been here for that price. So just make sure that you look for your email in a few minutes after we're done.
And we're
And
getting great comments about it. So Olga and Angelica, they loved your workshop that was led in Spanish. So
yeah,
that's great testimony to that. Wonderful.
yeah. And before we go, and before we do the meditation, I want to like give you 3 tips on the topics that we've shared. One is, I think it's really important for us to learn to slow down, right? And that means taking time for ourselves to just be with ourselves. Right? It's like downtime has been demonized for too long, especially in the business world, and for those of us who were like professionals and live a professional life in corporate world or have lived in a corporate world. So slowing down, it's like even like the greatest ideas and the greatest thinkers, or the greatest ideas from the greatest thinkers came when they were like sitting under a tree, and then an apple falls in your head, and it's like, oh, Sir Isaac Newton. It's like, oh, there's gravity, right? It's like he wasn't doing stuff; he was sitting under a tree, right? So it's important for us to slow down 2, develop compassion for self, right? As we slow down, pay attention to what's going on and develop compassion for self, take care of ourselves. And then as we take care of ourselves, develop the wisdom of interdependence, right? It's like we're all in this together. So life is about taking care of each other, right? And when I say each other, it's like include all sentient beings, include animals, plants, it's like everything, right? That's it. We're here to take care of each other, right? But it starts with self, right? So moving from a busy life to wisdom and compassion for me is those 3 simple steps were life transforming for myself, right? Learning to slow down, developing self-compassion, and then naturally, I remember when I was a kid, I would go in my bus, going to school, looking out the window, and thinking, it's like, why do people hurt each other? Like compassion is innate in us, right? It's natural, right? And then I learned competition, and I forgot about it for a lot of years, and then I had to remember that. Right? But I remember being a kid and just thinking, it's like, I don't understand why people hurt each other, right? And then for me, a few years ago, probably about 12, 15 years ago, it was about starting to remember that thought and developing that, right? Again, and bringing that back to my daily life. So those 3 tips. All right. So if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat. And Carine, should we move into final meditation so we can?
Yeah. Unless Jerker, you want to share your own 3 tips.
Okay.
If
Smiling, breathing, and nature.
Yeah.
He's always got to do better than me,
right? Wonderful. Great stuff. Rodolfo, you'd like to then get started with the meditation and we wrap it up for tonight then.
Yeah. And obviously that was sarcasm, right? It's like so let's finally come to a position. And whenever you're ready, if you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes, or you can keep your eyes open. But let's just take that little bit piece of fun, let it spread throughout your whole body. Feel that smile coming from your heart, opening up the energy throughout your whole body. Breathe in, feel the air coming into the lungs. Breathe out, let joy spread as your body relaxes when you exhale. Let all that information, sharing, run down from your head into your heart. And let it feel as joy and peace. And breathe out. Notice how every time you breathe out, your body naturally relaxes. And you can let as you breathe out, that wisdom spread throughout every cell in your body. Breathe, smile, and allow yourself to connect to nature and everything around you. Feel the air coming in through nostrils. Feel your lungs being filled up with all that oxygen that nurtures your body. And as you breathe out, recognize your body relaxing, letting go of the carbon dioxide, acknowledging that the carbon dioxide serves as nurturing particles for plants and trees. You breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide, or you breathe in love and you exhale love. Remember that in every breath, we're interacting with all of nature and each other. And the greatest thing we can do for self and others is treat ourselves with compassion and let that compassion spread. Breathe in and out, and allowing those sensations to settle in your body. Whenever you're ready, you can open up your eyes.
Wonderful. How does everybody feel? Thumbs up? Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Oh, that's so sweet, Olga. Very cool. Uh, any final thoughts from anyone, actually, because you all hold so much wisdom in each of you, and I think this is what we don't realize, that in us we have all the resources we need, all the wisdom we've accumulated over the years, to know how to live a life with compassion and with intention and with interconnectedness. So if anyone at all on the call has any final thoughts for us, for Rodolfo, Jerker, and me, please do share. And if not, I guess
I see a lot of thank yous on the so thank you all.
yeah, thank you all so much. Truly thank you for being here.
All right.
I just wanted to say it's very beautiful to find a community to practice together, because sometimes when we're on our own trying to be kind in the world, compassionate, and giving ourselves compassion and kindness, to find a community, even one or two people, it's really, really wonderful scaffolding in our life.
Very true, Carrie. Very true. Thank you.
And I think we have a couple of more days, maybe in emails you'll share. We have a couple of other topics we want to explore together in early December and early January. So it'll be a continued exploration.
Yeah, we have We have another couple dates planned to do webinars, Jerker and myself. Carine, if you want to be a part of them, you're invited to join us, obviously. So those would be early December and then January. And you'll receive some emails from that. So please, you're welcome to join us and spread the word if you want. If you're liking what you're receiving, just please spread the word and let's get this information out. You'll also get a recording of the webinar tomorrow. So I got to download it and do a little things and upload it to YouTube and all that. So if you want to go back to anything we said or you want to share it, and you'll get a recording of that. So
great stuff. Okay, and on this note, namaste, everyone. May you all be happy, be at peace, and be liberated from all kinds of misery and suffering. So, sending you all love and kisses from the UAE, and also Rodolfo and Jerker. I feel very privileged to have been on this webinar with you today.